Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're digging into something pretty fundamental in education. How we actually learn to speak English in school.
Right. It's a common experience, isn't it? Studying for years, but maybe not feeling confident talking.
Exactly. And we've got some really interesting source material today. It's basically snippets from a conversation, people looking back at their own school days, learning English.
Sharing the struggles, and also some thoughts on, how things could be better.
Yeah, so think of it like getting their raw takes on the challenges and maybe some solutions. Our mission here is to pull out the key insights from their chat. Why are speaking skills so important, and what can schools, realistically do?
Okay, sounds good. Where do we start?
Well, the first thing that really jumps out is this feeling of just wanting more chances to talk, to actually speak English at school.
Yeah, that makes sense. One person sort of wished, if only we had more opportunities.
Right. It sounds simple, but it's huge, isn't it? This idea that if they'd started earlier, practiced more,
They'd get fluent faster. Which, lines up with how language learning works. You need that practice, that repetition.
it's like muscle memory almost.
Exactly. For your mouth, not just your eyes reading a book.
But then the conversation takes a bit of a turn. Someone mentions what they call the sad part.
Ah, right. The teachers.
Yeah, the idea that sometimes the teachers themselves weren't maybe super confident speaking English.
And that's a tough one. Because if the teacher struggles,
How can they really guide the students effectively in speaking? It's logical.
and they shared some anecdotes, didn't they, about teachers who just, weren't fluent speakers, personal stories, but they point to a possible wider issue.
Definitely. Which leads naturally to the first solution they float.
Teacher training.
Exactly. Training focused specifically on improving the teacher's own spoken English.
Which seems foundational, right? If you want good guys, the guys need to know the way. Confident teachers can model the language better.
Yeah, and maybe create a safer space for students to try too.
For sure. Less fear of making mistakes if the teacher is comfortable.
Okay, so that's one idea. Then there's this other approach they talked about, the English environment approach.
Oh, right. The 5-minute rule.
Yeah. Dedicate just a small part of each class, maybe only 5 minutes, where everyone just speaks English. No exceptions.
That's interesting. Even a little bit done consistently.
Could build comfort, maybe? That seemed to be the hope.
Yeah, and it might sort of gently push the teachers to brush up on their own skills too, if they have to lead it every day.
Makes sense. It sets a routine, an expectation.
Like, okay, this is English time now.
But, it's not always just about the teacher or the system. The conversation also got personal.
Someone shared that even with good teachers, they were just too shy.
Right. That feeling of being nervous, not wanting to speak up. I think a lot of people can relate to that.
Absolutely. It shows it's not just about the grammar, the words,
Yeah.
but also the how,
Yeah.
the confidence, the feeling safe enough to try.
They even mentioned feeling nervous when teachers just chatted in English amongst themselves and actually disliking English at first.
Which is quite a starting point, isn't it? Shows how much emotions are tied up in learning.
Totally. And then came this, turning point for that person. An embarrassing moment.
The market story.
They ran into a teacher at the market. Teacher asks a simple question in English, and they just blanked. Couldn't understand.
Oof. Yeah, that feeling of embarrassment.
But weirdly, that bad experience was the trigger.
It's funny how that works sometimes, isn't it? That discomfort became this, powerful motivator.
Yeah, a real wake-up call about the gap between knowing about English and actually using it.
Practical needs kicking in.
It seems so, because after that, they described this real shift, deciding, okay, I'm going to embrace this, learn words, practice speaking.
Even reading books out loud for pronunciation. Taking active steps.
Yeah, it shows that you can't just wait for it to happen. You got to, actively engage.
That personal drive is so important. The willingness to step up and, try.
Which leads into this great analogy they used, vocabulary as ingredients for a recipe.
Oh, I like that one.
Me too. Knowing words is like having ingredients.
But you need to know how to mix them, right? How to
Oh.
put them together to actually make something.
Exactly. How they work in sentences, in conversation. It's not just the list.
Which ties right into the next point about just memorizing lists.
Uh-huh. The classic textbook vocabulary list drill. Memorize, test, forget.
Yeah, someone shared that experience. Learning all these words, but never actually using them in a real way.
So, surprise, surprise.
They didn't stick. As they put it, it's no wonder they didn't stick with us.
Right, because you weren't actually applying them.
It's that difference between passive vocabulary words you recognize and active vocabulary words you can actually pull out and use when you need them.
You need to use them in real situations, it seems. That's what makes them stick.
Yeah, get a feel for how they fit, the context, how they sound. Active use is key for retention.
And this then connects to a frustration that came up about the focus on exams.
Ah, yes. Teachers pushing for good test scores.
Sometimes over developing actual practical speaking skills,
And the result? Lots of students study English for ages.
but still freeze up when they try to have a conversation.
Yeah, it raises questions about, like, what's the main goal? Is it ticking boxes on a test, or is it actually communicating?
Right. You can ace a grammar quiz, but still not be able to order a coffee in English. Where's the balance?
It feels like sometimes the assessment part overshadows the skill-building part.
And they shared another story kind of illustrating this whole struggle with speaking.
The brave volunteer.
Yeah. Teacher asks someone, anyone, to speak some English in front of everyone. Silence. Then this one girl puts her hand up,
Gives a decent little speech, impresses the teacher.
but then comes the reveal.
She'd memorized the whole thing beforehand.
Exactly. Which, takes effort, but it's not really speaking, is it? Not spontaneous communication.
It perfectly shows the difference between reciting something and actually expressing your own thoughts on the fly.
Right. And that spontaneity is kind of the whole point.
But it's scary. They mention people treating speaking English like it's rocket science.
Yeah, that fear is real. Fear of mistakes, looking stupid.
But the only way past it, as they said, is just practice and building that confidence bit by bit.
You have to be willing to make those mistakes, I guess. See them as part of learning.
Absolutely. Embrace the messiness of it.
And near the end, they kind of spoke directly to people watching or listening,
Yeah, like if you stuck with this, you're serious about improving.
and encouraging them to actually use new words they picked up from the discussion itself.
Right. Don't just hear them, try them out. Consistent effort.
That constant practice loop.
It's a journey, not a destination you just arrive at.
Right.
Keep engaging with it.
They also paused to explain a few keywords they'd used, like embrace and spontaneously,
And how wonder was used in that phrase, it's no wonder they didn't stick.
which is helpful, actually. Understanding those nuances is part of getting better.
Definitely. It's about deeper comprehension, not just surface level meaning. Using words effectively yourself.
Okay, so wrapping this deep dive up, what are the big takeaways?
Well, first, the huge need for just more speaking practice in schools seems obvious, but clearly lacking sometimes.
Yeah, less passive learning, more active doing. And teacher proficiency is critical. Teachers need to be comfortable speakers themselves.
Absolutely. They're the models, the guides, and then the whole idea of using vocabulary actively.
Not just memorizing lists like ingredients you never cook with.
Right. You got to learn to blend them, use them in context.
Underpinning it all.
Getting over the fear, just starting, practicing consistently, and embracing the language.
It takes that personal commitment alongside the right environment.
For sure.
So here's something to think about as we finish. This shift from just memorizing stuff to actually applying it. How does that resonate in other parts of your life?
Ooh, good question.
Are there other areas where you're just collecting ingredients instead of really learning how to blend them and use them? Something to mull over.
Definitely food for thought.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.